very quickly about the system, I guess you know already everything about it. Moad wanted me to speak about advantages of our system against other systems. So I would mention the technical part only very briefly, and then get to the advantages so that we don't waste too much time on technical details. Basically, in the smart home world or smart building world, there are three types of control systems. Uh, there are open protocol systems like KNX, which means that the investor can use hardware components from any manufacturer, and they talk on the same protocol, which is KNX, let's say, most of the time. So if you own a hotel, for example, and after 10 years you want to extend the installation, but the the modules you bought in 10 years ago are no more in production anymore. Maybe the company is not doing that anymore. It is not a problem for you as a hotel owner, because you can take any other device, and you can connect it, and they will be on the same network, talking the same language, the KNX language. So this is an open system. It's a great advantage for KNX. We are not in that category. So our devices, so the communication we have on our bus terminals, it is not KNX, it is proprietary. It means that we developed our own protocol for communication. So this is not a KNX system. Like Essentia is doing also VMAR. VMAR has two systems. One is KNX and the other one is proprietary. A good question would be that what is, if KNX is open, if it is so beneficial for the investor, what's the purpose of making a different protocol, a closed protocol, a protocol which only we can use, and the villa owner or the hotel owner cannot extend it by devices from other manufacturers? The explanation is mostly about programming. We will get to it later. But first, the general information is that there are open systems like KNX, or in large buildings, in office towers, a different protocol is being used. It's called BACnet, 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 Building Automation Control Network, BACnet. So that's an alternative to KNX. And some 20, 30 years ago, it was Modbus, was a strong protocol. Modbus is still being used today, but it's mostly for HVAC integration. So it's a small scale protocol. The major players are in residential, it's KNX, and in commercial buildings, KNX plus BACnet or BACnet. We don't fit into that picture because we have our own proprietary protocol. But at the same time, we have gateways, communication gateways for all other protocols. So you can integrate. We have these gateways, and see one of them is KNX gateway. So if you connect core and KNX, then you can talk, you can use KNX switches, KNX thermostats, or KNX hotel reception system, which is talking via KNX to the rest of the building. You can integrate it. So it means that we are a proprietary system which is open for communication with other protocols. Because in the last category of all smart building systems are systems which are completely closed. There are systems like Nico and Domintel and a bunch of others where you can only use their push buttons, their thermostats. You cannot integrate it with any other protocol. They don't have gateways for KNX. They don't have gateways for Modbus, and so on. So that's an extreme case. We are somewhere in the middle. So our input-output modules, they don't talk on KNX. They have the proprietary protocol, but at the same time we have gateways into other protocols. So it's a combination on the hardware specification itself. I can tell you in general, if I shall speak about advantages of our system. So we try to make the modules universal as much as possible. I give you an example. So you have the relay output module. So you can use one output to control one light, for example. But in our module, you can also combine two outputs to control a shading motor, a roller shutter or a blind motor. In some systems, sometimes you have situation or often you have situation with other systems that you actually need one device for lighting control and another one for blinds control because their hardware does not support combination of two outputs. And this leads to a situation that you don't use all the terminals on the lighting module because maybe you need only 5 and you paid for 12. They stay unused, and then you need to buy another device for the blinds control, and again maybe you don't use all the outputs and something stays unused. In our case, this is not so much happening because you can recycle the module for different purposes. So it can be a standalone switch output for lighting control, but it can also be used for blinds control. It means that you can use all the outputs as you want, and this is first of all, you need to buy less devices, so it is cheaper. And another important benefit is that it takes up less space in the distribution box. Typically, it sounds trivial, but in installations, it is very often a big problem that there is not enough space in the distribution box. And when we have compact, small modules, which are very universal, it saves space in the distribution box as well, besides the cost. Okay, so about universal devices, one other thing, universal input module means that every single input can be, that you connect a temperature sensor. It measures temperature. You connect a light switch or a blinds controller, or you connect a motion sensor to the input. You can connect counters like electric meters and other stuff. You can connect analog sensors, for example, humidity or some special sensors. And on our module, because there are many manufacturers who have different input modules for different types of inputs. That for temperature inputs, you need one device. For push button inputs, you need another device. And this is, again, the consequence of this is that you need to buy more devices from them, and it takes up more space. It is less utilized. So in our case, we work hard to make it very universal so that to every single terminal you can connect any type of input. So that would be an advantage. You need less modules, it is cheaper, and you also need less space in the distribution box. One important thing which you need to be able to distinguish between KNX and between our system is that our system is centralized. So in our system, you have to have the control unit. So when you have the KNX system from VMware, again, you need to pay attention because VMware has two different systems. One is KNX and one is the proprietary. In our case, we are a centralized system. It means that we have to have the control unit. That's the brain of the system. So if you press a button and the press of the button shall turn on the light, it means that the signal from the button needs to get to the control unit. You have to have that brain. So if the button is pressed, it needs to get to the control unit, and then the control unit evaluates what shall happen. So imagine it's like a human body that if you feel something is hot, you get the information from the sensor, and it is your brain that evaluates what shall be, what kind of action you need to take. Then you move your hand with your muscles. That's like the output. You get input into the brain, and then the brain decides what shall happen. You make a movement. And in our system, it's exactly the same. So this is the brain. And in KNX, surprisingly, it is different. In KNX, there is no brain. The case with KNX is that every single module has automation programming built into its microchip, and it is executing the program on its own. So if one unit fails in the KNX network, there is no impact on the other modules. The other modules keep working. This is called a decentralized system. So there is no control unit, there is no brain in the system. If one unit fails, the rest of the system keeps working. And that's a massive advantage of KNX, this decentralization. In our case, it's not possible. In our case, if the control unit fails, it's the same like for a person. If the brain fails, then it doesn't matter if you are healthy or not. If the brain is not working, nothing is working. Again, this is something which needs to be explained. If you want to hear advantages of our system, TapHome is a centralized system. It has a control unit. It has a brain, and yeah, the benefits. The reason why we have it like that is that we have fantastic programming possibilities. And this is exactly when you compare animals to plants, that animals can do more than plants can. Yes, and this is because they have brains. And also for the protocol in KNX, it is true that you can the investor is not dependent on one manufacturer, but it is dependent on one type of programming. And this is the problem with KNX, that the investor can choose any hardware, but on the software layer, there is no flexibility at all. There is only one software which is being used to program all KNX devices from all manufacturers. There are no alternatives. You are stuck with that single software. It is expensive. It is not easy to operate, and it requires a lot of training to be able to work with it. So it's the integrator needs to be a real expert, and this is a big disadvantage of KNX. So you see, on one side, it has advantages. It is decentralized, so it's not dependent on the control unit. It is open for many manufacturers, so you can combine different devices from different manufacturers. You are not, as an investor, you are not dependent on one manufacturer. That's a big advantage. But on the same time, the programming is very complex. It is closed. The investor is fully dependent on one integrator. And it's a question about your business model, because sometimes integrators, they want to control the investor, that if the investor wants to change something, they have to call you, they have to work with you, you have to support them, and if you don't, then they have a big problem. But maybe this is not your business plan. Maybe you want to finish the project quickly and move on to another one, and you want that your customer is able to change something, to adjust something, to be able to operate it on their own. And in KNX, it is very complicated to achieve that. Very complicated, because the programming is really sophisticated, it's complex, requires training. Maybe another integrator will not have access to what you program, and so on. So there are many, many limitations on the software side of KNX. So it's the application, the user application is completely separated from the integrator application. In our system, in TapHome, and that's a unique feature of TapHome, you do programming in the same software as the user is using, but you can limit access to features or to devices for the user. That's a completely different story, like you have on KNX. So this is the first screen after you install the application. You see here on the bottom, it has a demo button. This is something you shall play with. Yeah, and now we are getting to the good parts of the application. So I mentioned the universal hardware. I explained, proprietary, centralized, and so on. And now we'll see why it makes sense to have a proprietary system which is centralized. It gives us, as a manufacturer of the system, unlimited possibilities about programming. We can do it as we want, and we can optimize it, we can change it, we can change the approach. We have endless flexibility. In KNX, it is not the case at all. You have no or almost no flexibility.